All right, let's jump right in. We are absolutely surrounded by perfectly made stuff every single day. Our phones, our cars, you name it. But behind all that perfection, there's a quiet revolution happening on the factory floor. It's a huge shift from the human eye to the constant, unblinking gaze of a robot. Today, we're going to break down how automated quality control is completely changing the game and redefining what it means for something to be flawless. So let's kick things off with a simple question. Really think about it. The last piece of tech you bought, a phone, headphones, whatever, the seams are perfect, right? The finish is pristine. How on earth does that happen? Not just once, but millions and millions of times. Well, the answer is this fascinating mix of cameras, robots, and some seriously smart artificial intelligence. To really get where we're going, you have to understand where we've been. For decades, the last line of defense for quality control was just a person, an inspector. But as you're about to see, when you're trying to achieve machine-level perfection, relying on the good old human eye has some serious limits. And here's the heart of the problem. Just imagine staring at a conveyor belt for 8 hours straight, trying to spot a scratch that's smaller than a human hair. You're going to get tired. Your eyes are going to glaze over. Plus, what one inspector thinks is good enough, the next person might reject. And on top of all that, modern assembly lines are just moving incredibly fast. Way too fast for our brains to reliably catch every little thing. That's the problem that automation was really born to solve. So, if the human eye isn't cutting it anymore, what's the alternative? Well, this is where we enter a whole new era of quality control, and it's led by the robot inspector. And this isn't just about replacing a person, it's about fundamentally upgrading our ability to see.
Okay, the official term is a bit of a mouthful, a vision-integrated automated quality assurance system. But don't let the crazy jargon scare you off. At its core, the idea is actually super simple and it's powerful. You give a machine the power to see, the ability to think, and the means to act on what it finds, all in the blink of an eye. Let's break down what that actually looks like.
It really all boils down to this simple three-step dance. First, a super high-speed camera sees the product, snapping a picture that's way more detailed than we could ever see. Second, an AI brain thinks about it, analyzing that image in just milliseconds to spot anything that's even slightly out of place. And finally, a robotic arm acts. It makes an instant call to sort the item, reject it, or maybe flag it for a closer look. See, think, act. That cycle, repeated thousands of times a minute, is what makes this whole thing work. And look, this isn't some far-off science fiction. It's happening right now in factories all over the world. So let's dive into a few real-world examples to see how different industries are putting these robot eyes to work. This is so cool because it shows just how flexible this technology is. In electronics, where a flaw on a circuit board might be super rare, they use something called few-shot learning. That lets the AI learn to spot a problem even if it's only seen a few examples. For cars, with all those shiny reflective surfaces, specialized AI models can spot tiny dents that our eyes would just slide right over. And then in packaging, they use things like infrared thermography. It's basically heat vision to make sure the seal on a medicine bottle is absolutely perfect. Every industry has its own unique challenge, and for each one, AI offers a pretty amazing solution. Okay, so we know it works, but the real question is, how well does it work? This is where things get genuinely impressive. We're not talking about a little improvement here and there. This is a legitimate, superhuman upgrade to the whole manufacturing process. The advantages really boil down to these three things. You get pinpoint accuracy, catching flaws no human ever could. You get incredible speed, making decisions faster than we can even process. And maybe the most important part, you get unwavering consistency. The robot inspector on hour 8 is just as sharp and focused as it was at the start of the shift. No fatigue, no distractions. Let's actually put some numbers on that accuracy. This chart says it all. A really focused human inspector, on a good day, might catch about 80% of defects. But these automated systems, they consistently hit 95% or even higher. And that massive jump, that's the difference between a pretty good product and a nearly perfect one. And that number, over 95%, that's the big takeaway. That's the new gold standard for quality. It's completely changing what's even possible when you're making millions of something. But it's not just about being accurate, it's about being fast. The inference latency, which is just a fancy way of saying the AI's thinking time, is less than 100 milliseconds. That is literally faster than you can blink. The system can see a defect and decide what to do about it before that product has even moved an inch further down the line. It's just mind-boggling.
And here might be the most impressive stat of them all. For really tough jobs, like finding tiny surface flaws in a big piece of cast metal, these systems can achieve a 98% recall rate. What does that mean? It means that out of every 100 defects, they only miss 2. That level of performance is just, wow, it's astonishing. Okay, so after hearing numbers like that, you're probably thinking, why isn't every single factory on the planet using this stuff right now? Well, like any huge leap forward, there are some pretty serious roadblocks that are keeping this from being a universal reality, at least for now.
And this is a perfect example of the promise clashing with the reality. The promise is this perfect, unblinking eye that sees everything. The challenge? Well, that eye can be surprisingly sensitive. Something as simple as the overhead lights flickering or a shadow changing as the sun moves across the sky. That can be enough to fool the AI and make it think there's a defect when there's actually nothing there.
And that's just one piece of the puzzle. Another huge challenge is data. To learn what a bad product looks like, an AI needs to see thousands of examples of defects, and that data can be really hard to get. Then, as you add more parts to the system to deal with things like lighting, the whole thing gets more complex and way more expensive. And because of that cost and complexity, a lot of these incredible systems are still just in the pilot stage. They're not in every factory just yet. So, despite all those challenges, the direction we're headed is crystal clear. We are moving towards a future of truly flawless manufacturing. So let's zoom out for a second and think about what this really means for all of us, as the people buying all this stuff. I think this quote really nails the fundamental shift that's happening. For the last century, manufacturing has been all about one thing: speed. How can we make things faster and cheaper? But now we're seeing the scales tip towards perfection and precision. It's not just about speed anymore. It's about getting it absolutely right every single time. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. As these robot inspectors get closer and closer to being actually flawless, our own expectations are going to change, right? It makes you wonder, in a world where machine-made perfection is the new standard, will our idea of good enough just completely disappear? What does that mean for the things we buy, the things we value, and the world we decide to build?